What happens when one of Britain's most beloved comedic geniuses sits down for what should be a lighthearted chat, only to find himself ambushed by a host determined to tear him down? In just 26 seconds, a single dismissive comment would ignite a firestorm that turned a morning talk show into absolute chaos, exposing the entitled behavior of a presenter who couldn't handle being challenged on live television. Rowan Atkinson walked onto the Loose Women set that morning with his trademark quiet confidence. The audience applauded warmly as he took his seat on the famous purple sofa, positioned directly across from Denise Welch, with Nadia Sawalha, Kay Adams, and Jane Moore completing the panel. The studio lights gleamed, cameras ready to capture what producers thought would be a delightful interview about his legendary career. Nobody expected what was about to unfold. "So, Rowan," Denise began, leaning forward with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "you've made millions playing the fool. Tell me, is that because it comes naturally to you?" The audience fell silent. It was supposed to be a joke, perhaps, but the delivery was sharp, cutting. Rowan's expression remained pleasant, though his eyes showed a flicker of something else. "Well, Denise, I'd say creating memorable characters takes quite a bit of skill, actually," he replied evenly. "It's not about playing the fool. It's about understanding human nature and reflecting it back in a way that connects with people." "Oh, understanding human nature," Denise said, waving her hand dismissively. "That's a bit pretentious, isn't it? You pull faces and fall over. Let's not dress it up as Shakespeare." Nadia Sawalha shifted uncomfortably in her seat, glancing at Kay Adams, who cleared her throat. The tension was already building, and they were barely 2 minutes into the interview. "I never compared it to Shakespeare," Rowan said, his voice still calm but gaining an edge. "But physical comedy is an art form. Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Jacques Tati, these were masters of their craft. It requires timing, precision, and yes, an understanding of what makes people laugh and why." Right, Denise interrupted, rolling her eyes theatrically. "But at the end of the day, you're just a man and a teddy bear, aren't you? I mean, how much depth can there really be?" Jane Moore jumped in, trying to redirect. "Rowan, I think what we'd love to hear about is your creative process. How do you develop a character like, say, Mr. Bean?" "Thank you, Jane," Rowan said, nodding appreciatively. "The process actually starts with observation. I watch how people move, how they react to situations, their little quirks and mannerisms." "Sounds riveting," Denise cut in again, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Watching people, revolutionary stuff." "Denise," Kay Adams said carefully, "maybe we should let Rowan finish his thought?" "Oh, I'm sorry," Denise said, not sounding sorry at all. "Am I not showing enough respect to the man who's made a career out of acting like a child? Should we all bow down because he can waggle his eyebrows?" The audience gasped. Several people murmured in disapproval. Rowan sat very still, his hands folded in his lap, his face unreadable. "You seem to have a very dismissive view of comedy," he said quietly. "May I ask why you invited me here if you have so little regard for what I do?" "We invited you because our viewers like you," Denise shot back. "But that doesn't mean I have to pretend that what you do is some kind of genius. It's slapstick. It's basic. It's the lowest form of comedy." "Actually," Nadia interjected, "I think millions of people around the world would disagree with that assessment. Rowan's work has brought joy to countless families." "Oh, here we go," Denise said, turning to Nadia. "The defense brigade. Look, I'm just being honest. We're supposed to have honest conversations on this show, aren't we? Or are we only allowed to blow smoke up our guests' backsides?" "There's a difference between honesty and rudeness," Rowan said, his voice still measured but growing firmer. "You can ask challenging questions without being insulting." "Insulting?" Denise laughed sharply. "Oh, I'm insulting you now? Because I'm not fawning all over you like everyone else does? Maybe that's your problem, Rowan. Maybe you're so used to people telling you how wonderful you are that you can't handle someone being real with you." "Being real?" Rowan repeated. "You've done nothing but belittle my work since I sat down. You've mocked my profession, dismissed decades of craft, and insulted not just me but every person who works in physical comedy. That's not being real. That's being disrespectful." The studio audience began to applaud. Some people cheered. Denise's face flushed red. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice rising. "You don't get to come on my show and tell me I'm disrespectful. This is my panel. These are my questions. If you don't like them, you know where the door is." "Denise, come on!" Jane Moore said, reaching out to touch her arm. Let's just take a breath here. No, Jane, Denise snapped, shaking her off. I'm tired of guests who come on here thinking they're above being questioned. He's not royalty. He's an actor who makes faces for a living. And you're a presenter who apparently thinks belittling people is good television, Rowan said, his calm finally cracking. I've sat through many interviews in my career, some tough, some probing, some genuinely challenging. But I've never sat across from someone who seemed to take such personal pleasure in trying to diminish another person. Oh, please, Denise scoffed. You're being dramatic. Typical actor, always performing. I'm being honest, Rowan countered. Which is apparently what you value, so surely you can appreciate it. The truth is, you've been hostile from the moment I sat down. I came here in good faith, ready to have a conversation, and you've used it as an opportunity to attack me. Kay Adams tried again to intervene. Why don't we move on to another topic? Rowan, you have a new project coming up, don't you? Do we really care about his new project? Denise said, laughing. Let me guess. More silly faces? More falling over? How groundbreaking. The audience began to boo. Actual boos, loud and clear, directed at Denise. She looked shocked, then angry. Oh, so now the audience is turning on me? She said, looking around. For what? For not treating him like he's some untouchable icon? For asking real questions? You haven't asked questions, Rowan said, his voice quiet but cutting through the noise. You've made attacks. There's a profound difference. A question seeks to understand. An attack seeks to wound. You've been wounding from the start. I've been doing my job, Denise insisted. Your job is to interview guests, not to bully them, Nadia said firmly. Rowan's right. You've crossed a line today. Oh, not you too, Denise said, turning on Nadia. What? Are you all ganging up on me now? Nobody's ganging up on you, Jane Moore said. We're just pointing out that this interview has gone off the rails. This isn't how we treat guests. This isn't who we are. This is exactly who I am, Denise declared. I'm the one who's not afraid to say what everyone's thinking. Someone needs to have the guts to point out that the emperor has no clothes. Except I'm fully clothed, and you're simply being cruel, Rowan said, standing up slowly. I don't need to sit here and be subjected to this. Life is too short to spend it with people who are determined to be unpleasant. Oh, you're leaving? Denise said mockingly. Can't take the heat? Poor little Rowan, running away because someone didn't worship him. I'm not running away, Rowan said calmly, removing his microphone. I'm choosing not to participate in whatever this is. You see, Denise, I've learned something over my many years in this business. You can disagree with people respectfully. You can challenge them thoughtfully. You can even dislike their work and express that constructively. But what you've done today is none of those things. You've simply been mean. And meanness disguised as honesty is still just meanness. The audience erupted in applause. People stood up, clapping and cheering. Nadia, Jane, and Kay all looked uncomfortable, clearly agreeing with Rowan but trapped by their professional obligation to stay seated. Sit down, Rowan, Denise said, her voice harder now. You're being ridiculous. This is live television. You can't just walk off. Watch me, Rowan said simply. If you walk off this set, you'll never work with this network again. Denise threatened. I'll make sure of it. Rowan paused, turning back to look at her. His expression was one of genuine pity. Do you hear yourself? He asked. Do you hear how you sound? Threatening me because I won't sit here and let you insult me? That's not power, Denise. That's insecurity. And it's quite sad, actually. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me, Denise hissed. You don't know anything about me. I know that you've spent this entire interview trying to make yourself feel bigger by making me feel smaller, Rowan said. I know that when the audience supported me instead of you, you became defensive rather than reflective. And I know that right now, instead of apologizing or acknowledging that perhaps you've been unfair, you're doubling down and making threats. That tells me everything I need to know. Get off my stage, Denise said coldly. It's not your stage, Rowan replied. It belongs to the network, to the production team, to the crew who works so hard to make this show happen, and to the audience who tunes in expecting to see thoughtful conversations, not personal attacks. You're just the person sitting in the chair today, and the way you're acting, I wouldn't be surprised if that changes soon. How dare you, Denise sputtered, standing up now too. Who do you think you are? I'm someone who knows my worth, Rowan said. And I'm someone who won't compromise my dignity for ratings or drama or whatever it is you think you're creating here. I've been in this business long enough to know that kindness matters. Respect matters. And when those things are absent, no amount of television exposure is worth it. Nadia Sawala stood up, which surprised everyone. Rowan's right, she said. This has been uncomfortable to watch. Denise, I've tried to stay neutral, but I can't anymore. This wasn't an interview. This was an ambush. Oh, brilliant, Denise said sarcastically. My own panelist turning on me. Fantastic. I'm not turning on you, Nadia said. I'm being honest, which is what you claim to value. The truth is, you've been unnecessarily harsh. Rowan came here as a guest, and we've treated him poorly. That's on us. Jane Moore nodded slowly. I have to agree. This got out of hand. Rowan, I apologize for how this went. You deserve better. Kay Adams added. We all could have done more to steer this in a better direction. I'm sorry too, Rowan. Denise looked around at her fellow panelists, her face a mixture of anger and disbelief. You're all apologizing to him? After I, asked some tough questions? This is unbelievable. They weren't tough questions, Rowan said. They were insults framed as questions. And the fact that you can't see the difference is genuinely concerning. Get out, Denise said, pointing toward the exit. Just get out. I don't want you here anymore. I was already leaving, Rowan said. But I'll say this before I go. To the audience, both here and at home, thank you for your support. It means more than you know. To Nadia, Jane, and Kay, thank you for your integrity. It takes courage to speak up when you're caught in an awkward position. And to you, Denise, I genuinely hope you take some time to reflect on this. Not because I need an apology, but because this kind of behavior doesn't serve you, it doesn't serve this show, and it doesn't serve the people watching. Life is challenging enough without us making it harder for each other. He turned and began walking toward the exit. The audience was on their feet now, applauding loudly, some even whistling their support. Denise stood rigid, her arms crossed, watching him go. This is ridiculous, she said to the camera. We'll be right back after this break. But Rowan wasn't done yet. Just before reaching the exit, he stopped and turned back one final time. You know what's interesting? He called out, his voice carrying across the studio. You spend all this time trying to diminish what I do, calling it childish and basic. But you know what takes real maturity? Treating people with kindness even when you disagree with them. Creating joy for others even when you're struggling yourself. Finding humor in difficult situations instead of creating difficult situations for humor. Maybe that's the part of comedy you don't understand, Denise. It's not about being clever or cutting or superior. It's about connection. It's about making people feel lighter, not heavier. And today, you made this entire room feel heavier. The audience applauded even louder. Some people were calling out their agreement. Denise's face had gone from red to almost purple. Are you finished? She asked icily. Almost, Rowan said. I just want to say one more thing. To anyone watching who's ever been made to feel small by someone in a position of power, who's been mocked for what they love or told that their passion doesn't matter, please know this. Your work has value. Your creativity matters. Don't let anyone's insecurity or need to feel superior diminish what you bring to the world. Keep creating, keep sharing, keep being brave enough to put yourself out there, even when people like Denise are waiting to tear you down. With that, he gave a small bow to the audience, nodded respectfully to the three panelists who had defended him, and walked off the set. The studio erupted. People were cheering, clapping, some even crying. The camera operators didn't know where to point their cameras. The floor manager looked panicked, speaking urgently into his headset. Denise stood alone in the center of the chaos, trying to maintain her composure. Well, she said, attempting to sound unbothered, that was certainly dramatic. Typical actor behavior, as I said, can't handle a little criticism. But her words fell flat. The audience wasn't having it. The boos returned, louder than before. Nadia shook her head visibly. Jane Moore looked away, clearly embarrassed. Kay Adams was staring at her hands. Oh, come on, Denise said, her voice rising defensively. You're all acting like I committed some terrible crime. I asked questions. I challenged him. That's literally what we do on this show. Not like that, we don't, Nadia said firmly. That wasn't challenging, that was attacking, and you know it. I don't know any such thing, Denise insisted. He came on here with his airs and graces, expecting us all to fall over ourselves, complimenting him. Well, I don't play that game. I treat everyone the same. You don't, though, Jane Moore said, finally speaking up more forcefully. I've watched you interview dozens of guests, and you've never been that hostile before. What was different today? Why did you go after him like that? Denise looked taken aback by the question. I didn't go after him. I just refused to coddle him. There's a middle ground between coddling and attacking, Kay Adams added. And you seem determined to stay far away from that middle ground. Every answer he gave, you twisted into something negative. Every explanation, you mocked. It was relentless. Oh, so now everyone's an expert on interviewing? Denise snapped. Suddenly, you all know better than me how to do my job? It's not about expertise, Nadia said. It's about basic respect. Rowan Atkinson is one of the most accomplished comedic actors of our generation. He's brought laughter to millions of people across the world. He's won awards, broken records, created characters that will outlive all of us. And you treated him like he was nothing, like his entire career was a joke. Because maybe it is, Denise said. Maybe we put too much importance on people who just entertain us. Maybe we should be more critical, more willing to say when something is overrated. The audience booed again, even louder. Someone shouted, "You're out of order." Others joined in with similar sentiments. The floor manager was making frantic cutting motions, signaling to go to commercial, but the cameras kept rolling. You want to talk about overrated? Nadia said, her voice sharp now. Let's talk about hosts who think being rude equals being brave, who confuse cruelty with honesty, who build themselves up by tearing others down. That's what's overrated, Denise, not Rowan Atkinson's incredible body of work. Denise's mouth opened and closed. For the first time, she seemed genuinely at a loss for words. The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence, broken only by scattered applause from the audience supporting Nadia's statement. I think, Kay Adams said carefully, we need to take that break now. We'll be back shortly. The camera finally cut, but the damage was done. In the studio, crew members were whispering, stealing glances at Denise. The audience was buzzing with conversation, most of it clearly critical of how the interview had gone. Denise sat back down heavily, her earlier bravado crumbling. This is a disaster, she muttered. Yes, it is, Jane Moore agreed. And it didn't have to be. Rowan came here in good faith. He was polite, thoughtful, willing to engage. And you went after him from the very first question. Why? I don't have to explain myself to you, Denise said, but her voice lacked conviction. Maybe not to us, Nadia said, but you're going to have to explain yourself to someone. The producers, the network executives, the viewers at home, they all just watched you drive away one of Britain's most beloved actors. They watched you ignore your fellow panelists when we tried to redirect. They watched you get hostile with the audience when they didn't support your behavior. This isn't going to just blow over. Denise looked around at her colleagues, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of what had just happened. It was supposed to be funny, she said weakly. I was trying to do something different, to shake things up. Shake things up? Kay repeated. Denise, there's a difference between asking provocative questions and being provocative for its own sake. Rowan was right about everything he said. You weren't interviewing him. You were attacking him. And when he defended himself with grace and intelligence, you got defensive and made it worse. He called me insecure, Denise protested. And were you able to prove him wrong? Jane asked pointedly. Because from where I was sitting, everything you did after that comment just confirmed what he said. A secure person would have laughed it off or acknowledged the tension and moved on. You doubled down. You threatened him. You tried to use your position to intimidate him into staying. That's not the behavior of someone who's confident in themselves. Denise's eyes were shining now. Whether with tears or anger, it was hard to tell. You're supposed to be on my side, she said quietly. We're not on sides, Nadia said. We're trying to help you see what happened here. Rowan Atkinson just walked off this set, and he had every right to do so. You created a hostile environment, and he removed himself from it. That's not him being difficult or dramatic. That's him having boundaries and self-respect. The floor manager approached, looking stressed. We're back in 30 seconds. What do you want to do? Denise took a deep breath, visibly trying to compose herself. We carry on, she said. We do the rest of the show. And what do we say about what just happened? Jane asked. We acknowledge it, Kay said firmly, before Denise could answer. We don't pretend it didn't happen. We address it honestly. Denise nodded slowly, seeming to realize she had no other choice. The floor manager counted them back in, and the camera lights went red again. "Welcome back," Denise said, her voice more subdued than before. "As you saw before the break, our interview with Rowan Atkinson ended, well, unexpectedly. He chose to leave the show, and I think we need to talk about what happened." "We do," Nadia agreed. "And I think we need to be honest with our viewers. That interview became confrontational in a way that crossed a line. Rowan came here as our guest, and he deserved to be treated with more respect than he received." Denise's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "There were some tense moments," she admitted carefully. "It was more than tense moments," Jane corrected. "Denise, I think you need to own this. You were aggressive with him from the start. The audience could see it, we could see it, and clearly Rowan felt it too. That's why he left." The audience applauded this statement. Denise looked out at them, seeing no sympathy in their faces, only agreement with Jane's assessment. "Look," Denise said, "maybe I came on a bit strong, maybe I pushed too hard. But I still maintain that we should be able to ask challenging questions of our guests." "Challenging? Yes," Kay said. "But what you were doing wasn't challenging, it was dismissive. You weren't trying to understand his perspective or have a real conversation. You were trying to diminish him, and it showed." Denise was silent for a moment, clearly struggling with whether to continue defending herself or to concede the point. The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the cameras. "I apologize," she finally said, though the words seemed to cost her. "To Rowan, if you're watching, I apologize. That's not how I should have conducted that interview. I let my opinions override my professionalism, and that was wrong." The audience gave a polite but noticeably restrained applause. It was clear they appreciated the apology, but felt it was too little, too late. "I think we also need to acknowledge something else," Nadia said. "Rowan handled that situation with remarkable grace. He gave you multiple opportunities to course correct. He explained himself thoughtfully. He didn't lose his temper or become cruel in return. He simply stood up for himself and left when it became clear the situation wasn't going to improve. That's not dramatic behavior. That's dignity." More applause from the audience, this time louder and more sustained. Denise shifted in her seat uncomfortably. "He did handle it well," Jane agreed, "and his parting words about creating joy and treating people with kindness, those really resonated. I think that's what our viewers love about him. It's not just that he's funny. It's that his comedy comes from a place of warmth, not cynicism. Unlike what we saw today." Someone in the audience called out. There was a murmur of agreement from others. Denise's face flushed again. "I understand people are upset," she said, "but I hope we can move forward from this and continue with the show." "We can move forward," Kay said, "but I don't think we should just sweep this under the rug. This was a significant moment, and it says something important about how we conduct ourselves on this show. We need to do better." The three other panelists nodded in agreement. Denise looked isolated, sitting in her chair with her colleagues essentially united against her. The dynamic had completely shifted. Where she had started the show as the confident, controlling host, she now appeared defensive and diminished. "Let's take some questions from the audience," Nadia suggested. "I think they might have some thoughts to share." Denise looked like she wanted to refuse, but the floor manager was already moving through the audience with a microphone. A woman in her 60s stood up, her expression stern. "I've watched this show for years," she said, "and I've never been as disappointed as I am today. Rowan Atkinson is a treasure, and you treated him abominably. You owe him more than just an apology on air. You owe him a personal, private apology, and frankly, I think you owe your viewers an explanation for why you thought that behavior was acceptable." The audience erupted in applause. The woman sat down, and immediately another hand shot up. A younger man, probably in his 30s, was next. "I came here today excited to see Rowan," he said. "I grew up watching his shows. He's been a part of my life since I was a child. And watching you tear him down, watching you dismiss everything he's created, it was genuinely upsetting." Comedy matters. Laughter matters, especially in difficult times. And the people who dedicate their lives to bringing us that laughter deserve our respect, not our contempt. More applause, even louder this time. Denise was visibly struggling to maintain her composure. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. Another audience member, a young woman with tears in her eyes, stood up. "I have severe anxiety," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "And when I'm having a bad day, when everything feels too much, I watch Mr. Bean. I watch Blackadder. I watch Rowan Atkinson bring joy and laughter into the world, and it helps me. It genuinely helps me feel better. So when you say what he does doesn't matter, when you call it basic and childish, you're not just insulting him. You're insulting everyone who's ever been helped by his work. You're dismissing the real, tangible good that he's done in the world. The young woman sat down, wiping her eyes. The studio was completely silent, except for a few sniffles from other audience members, clearly moved by her words. Even the crew seemed affected, several looking away or blinking rapidly. Denise opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I never meant to dismiss the impact his work has had on people, she said quietly. I can see that I was wrong. I was very wrong. It's not just about Rowan, though, is it? Another audience member said, standing without waiting for the microphone. It's about the attitude you displayed, that sense of superiority, that need to knock someone down. We see enough of that in the world. We don't need to see it here, on a show that's supposed to be about conversation and connection. The floor manager was trying to regain some control, moving between audience members with the microphone, but people were standing up all over the studio now, wanting to have their say. The show had completely gotten away from its hosts. This is what happens when you forget that guests are people, an older man said. They're not here for your entertainment or for you to practice your put-downs on. They're here to share something with us, and we should be grateful for that. Denise looked at her fellow panelists, clearly hoping for support or intervention, but they remained silent, letting the audience speak. It was Nadia who finally raised a hand, asking for quiet. I think what we're all hearing, she said, is that this matters to people. The way we treat our guests matters. The respect we show to artists and creators matters. And today, we fell short of the standard our audience expects from us. I can't speak for Denise, but I can say that I personally will be thinking very carefully about what happened here and how I can do better in the future. As will I, Jane added. We're all learning in this moment and hopefully growing. Kay nodded her agreement. All eyes turned to Denise, waiting to see if she would add anything more substantial to her earlier apology. I hear you, she said finally. All of you. I hear the disappointment, the anger, the hurt. I made mistakes today. Significant ones. I let my desire to be provocative override my responsibility to be fair. I treated a guest poorly, and in doing so, I disrespected not just him, but all of you as well. I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. The audience seemed somewhat mollified by this more genuine apology. Though the atmosphere remained tense, the show continued, but the energy had fundamentally changed. Every segment felt awkward, every transition forced. The panel struggled to find their rhythm, and Denise in particular seemed deflated. Her earlier confidence completely gone. When the show finally ended and the camera stopped rolling, the studio audience filed out quietly, still processing what they had witnessed. Crew members went about their duties with unusual silence, avoiding eye contact with the hosts. The four panelists remained on the sofa for a moment, none of them quite sure what to say. That was brutal, Jane said eventually. It needed to be, Nadia replied. What happened today can't become normal. We can't let behavior like that slide. Denise stood up slowly, removing her microphone with shaking hands. I need some air, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She walked off the set without waiting for a response, leaving her three colleagues sitting in uncomfortable silence. In the green room, where guests waited before and after their appearances, Rowan's absence was notable. His chair sat empty, his water glass still half full where he'd left it before walking out to the studio. The makeup artist who had prepared him earlier shook her head sadly. He was so lovely when he arrived, she told a colleague. Funny, kind, patient. Asked about my family, remembered details from the last time he was here. That's the kind of person he is. He didn't deserve what happened out there. Her colleague agreed. I've worked on this show for 5 years, and I've never seen a guest treated like that. It was uncomfortable to watch, even from back here. Throughout the building, similar conversations were happening. Production assistants, camera operators, sound technicians, all discussing what they had witnessed. The consensus was universal. Denise had crossed a line, and Rowan had been right to leave. Back on the set, Nadia, Jane, and Kay were still sitting together, processing the morning's events. Do you think he'll ever come back? Jane asked. To the network, I mean. After today? Would you? Kay responded. If you'd been treated like that, humiliated on live television, would you trust them again? No, Jane admitted. I wouldn't. which means we've probably lost one of the best guests we could ever hope to have, all because of ego and a misguided attempt to be edgy. Nadia sighed. The worst part is, Rowan tried to give her so many outs. He could have gotten angry, could have matched her energy, could have created a real scene. But he stayed calm, stayed articulate, gave her chance after chance to redirect. And she just kept pushing, until he had no choice but to leave, Jane finished. And then he even managed to do that with grace. That speech he gave before he left, about kindness and making people feel lighter instead of heavier, that's going to be what people remember from today. Not Denise's questions or her apologies. Rowan's dignity. The three women sat in silence for another moment, each lost in their own thoughts about what the day had revealed about their show, their colleague, and perhaps themselves. Meanwhile, somewhere in the building, Denise sat alone in her dressing room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The confident woman who had started the show that morning looked back at her, but she barely recognized herself. How had it gone so wrong? When had her questions turned into attacks? At what point had she crossed from challenging to cruel? She pulled out her phone, knowing she shouldn't but unable to stop herself, and opened social media. The fallout was already beginning. Clips of the interview were being shared, dissected, commented on, and the overwhelming majority of responses were not in her favor. People were calling her a bully, demanding she apologize more thoroughly, questioning whether she should continue hosting the show. But it was the defenses of Rowan that cut deepest. Story after story from people sharing how his work had impacted them, helped them through difficult times, brought light into dark moments. Teachers talking about using his shows to help children with autism learn about social cues and emotions. Parents describing how watching his performances together had become treasured family memories. Healthcare workers explaining how they recommended his comedy to patients dealing with depression and anxiety. She had dismissed all of that, reduced it to nothing more than pulling faces and falling over. And in doing so, she had revealed something about herself that was now impossible to unsee. Her insecurity, her need to feel superior, her willingness to hurt someone else to make herself feel powerful. Rowan had been right about all of it, and now the whole world could see it too. A knock on her dressing room door made her jump. "Yes?" she called out, her voice hoarse. "It's the producer," came the reply. "We need to talk." Denise closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and stood up. She knew what was coming. She had known from the moment Rowan walked off that set that there would be consequences. The only question was how severe they would be. As she opened the door to face whatever came next, her last thought was of Rowan's final words to the audience, about connection, about lightness, about making the world feel less heavy. She had done the opposite of all of that today, and somewhere in London, Rowan Atkinson was probably already moving on with his day, unbothered and unbowed, while she faced the wreckage of her own making. The morning had started with a scheduled interview, a routine episode of a daytime talk show. It had ended with a masterclass in dignity versus ego, grace versus aggression, and a stark reminder that how we treat people, especially when we have power over them, reveals who we truly are. Rowan Atkinson had shown the world who he was, a man of principle and self-respect. And Denise Welch had shown the world who she was too, though that revelation was far less flattering. The cameras might have stopped rolling, but the impact of those 26 minutes would continue to reverberate. For Rowan, it would be just another example of handling a difficult situation with characteristic class. For Denise, it would become a defining moment, one that would require real reflection, genuine growth, and a fundamental reassessment of how she approached her role as a host, and more importantly, as a human being interacting with other human beings. The studio lights dimmed. The crew began packing up equipment. The audience had long since dispersed, taking their stories of what they witnessed with them. And on that famous purple sofa, now empty, sat the remnants of a conversation that had gone terribly wrong. A cautionary tale about pride, respect, and the moment when a guest becomes the teacher and the host becomes the student, whether she wanted that lesson or not.